The water was rising fast that night, our family car trapped on the bridge as the dam broke. I can still hear my mother's panic-stricken voice. "Thomas, we can only carry one." My father's calloused hands reached for my sister Elise, his favourite, while my mother's eyes avoided mine. "I'm sorry, Sophia," she whispered before they fled, leaving me to the raging current. Death was cold, then warm, then something else entirely. When I opened my eyes, 10 years had passed, but I hadn't aged a day. Some call it a miracle, others a second chance. I call it retribution. My parents never found my body, their guilt transforming them into hollow versions of themselves. Now I've returned as Cassandra Reed, the mysterious benefactor who's offering to save their struggling business from bankruptcy. They don't recognise the daughter they sacrificed, don't see the revenge burning behind my smile as I integrate myself into their lives. I watch them fawn over perfect Elise, now a successful surgeon engaged to a senator's son, while they welcome me, a stranger, into their home with desperate gratitude. How strange that they seek salvation from the very person they once abandoned to the flood. They chose which daughter deserved to live, and now I'll make them question that choice every day for the rest of their lives. The water didn't claim me that night. It transformed me. And by the time they realise who I really am, it will be far too late. I always knew I wasn't the favourite child, but I never thought my parents would actually choose between their daughters when disaster struck. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. The way my father's eyes lit up whenever Elise walked into the room. The way my mother saved the best portions for her at dinner. The way they'd move mountains to attend her dance recitals, but always had important work commitments during my debate competitions. That night started like any other family road trip. Dad insisted on taking the mountain route despite the weather alerts. "It'll save us an hour," he said, dismissing my concerns about the heavy rainfall upstream. Mum was busy helping Elise prepare for her scholarship interview the next day, quizzing her on potential questions from the passenger seat. I sat in the back, invisible as always, watching raindrops race down the window. The first sign of trouble came when we reached the old bridge spanning Wicker Creek. In the headlights, I could see the water level was unusually high, churning angrily below us. Dad hesitated for just a moment before driving onto the bridge. "We'll be fine," he muttered, more to himself than to us. We made it halfway across when we heard the siren. The emergency broadcast blared through our car radio. "Attention, all residents near Wicker Creek. The Northridge Dam has suffered a partial collapse. Evacuate immediately to higher ground. This is not a drill." The colour drained from my father's face as he slammed on the accelerator. Too late. A massive surge of water hit the bridge with such force that our car spun sideways. The engine sputtered and died. In the silence that followed, we could hear the ominous creaking of the bridge supports beneath us. "Everyone out!" Dad shouted, unbuckling his seatbelt. "We need to run for the embankment." But when we opened the doors, the situation became clear. The water was already knee-deep and rising rapidly. The current was so strong that my mother stumbled the moment her feet touched the water. Dad barely managed to grab her arm before she was swept away. That's when I heard the words that would change everything. "Thomas, we can only carry one!" My mother screamed over the roaring water. "You take Elise. She's lighter." I froze, unable to process what was happening. Surely they didn't mean... Dad turned to me, his face a mask of anguish. "Sophia, hold onto the car. Help will come." But we all knew help wouldn't arrive in time. The bridge was already starting to break apart beneath us. My father lifted Elise onto his back. My mother clutched his waist, and they started to move, fighting against the current toward the shore. "Wait!" I screamed, terror clawing at my throat. "Don't leave me!" My mother looked back once, her eyes meeting mine. "I'm sorry, Sophia," she whispered. Then they were gone, swallowed by the darkness and the rain. I clung to the car roof as long as I could, screaming until my voice gave out. When the bridge finally collapsed, the freezing water enveloped me. I remember thinking how peaceful it felt as I sank, how the pain faded to numbness. In those final moments, it wasn't fear that filled me, it was rage. A burning, all-consuming rage that refused to die even as everything else did. Death was cold, then warm, then something else entirely. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying on a riverbank 10 miles downstream. A fisherman had pulled me from the water, miraculously still breathing. But the real miracle, or curse, was yet to be discovered. While I had been swept away that night, time had continued flowing. 10 years had passed, but I hadn't aged a day. The doctors called it an anomaly, a medical mystery. They theorized that the extreme hypothermia had somehow preserved me in a state of suspended animation. The media called me the Sleeping Beauty of Wicker Creek. But I knew the truth was far less romantic. Whatever cosmic force had kept me alive had done so for a purpose. During my recovery, I learned what happened after I was left behind. My parents and Elise had made it to safety, but the guilt of abandoning me had eaten away at them. They'd spent fortunes on search parties, believing my body would eventually be found. My father's thriving architecture firm had crumbled as he spent more and more time drinking. My mother had aged decades in just years, her hair turning completely white. And Elise, perfect Elise, had channeled her survivor's guilt into becoming a brilliant trauma surgeon. They'd never moved on, but they'd lived. They'd built new lives while mine had been on pause. For months, I debated whether to reveal myself to them. The doctors wanted to make the connection, to reunite the miracle girl with her grieving family. But something stopped me. Why should I give them the relief of knowing I survived? Why should I absolve them of their choice? Instead, I crafted a new identity. Cassandra Reed, orphaned daughter of wealthy industrialists, recently returned from abroad. I hired the best tutors to catch me up on the decade I'd missed. I studied finance and business law. I learned about my family from afar, watching as my father's once successful company dwindled to near bankruptcy. And when the time was right, I approached them with an offer they couldn't refuse. "Mr. Harrison," I said, extending my hand across his cluttered desk, "I represent a group of investors interested in salvaging what remains of Harrison Designs." My father looked older than his 56 years, with deep lines etched around his bloodshot eyes. He didn't recognize me. How could he? In his mind, his younger daughter would be 28 now, not 18, as I appeared. "Miss Reed?" he responded, his handshake weak. "Forgive me, but why would any investor be interested in a failing firm?" I smiled, the same smile I'd practiced for months in the mirror. "Let's just say I see potential where others see ruin." Over the next few weeks, I integrated myself into their lives. I visited their home, not the one I grew up in, but a smaller house they downsized to after financial troubles hit. I met my mother, now a frail woman who flinched at every loud noise, as if expecting another disaster. And I met Elise, now 30, engaged to a politician's son, and every bit the golden child she'd always been. They welcomed me warmly, this stranger offering salvation. My father started to look at me with something like hope. My mother insisted I join them for family dinners. Elise confided in me about her wedding plans. None of them suspected. None of them saw what was hiding behind my smile, but I saw everything. I saw how my parents' bedroom was filled with photos of me, a shrine to their lost daughter. I saw how my mother sometimes set the table for 4 instead of 3, then broke down crying when she realized her mistake. I saw how my father visited the rebuilt bridge every year on the anniversary of the flood. Their guilt was a living thing, consuming them from within, and still it wasn't enough. My plan was simple but devastating. I would save their company, yes. I would become indispensable to them. And then, when they had come to love me like a second daughter, I would reveal everything and watch their world crumble all over again. What I didn't account for was how being around them would affect me. The first time my mother hugged me in gratitude, I nearly broke. The first time my father proudly introduced me to his colleagues as the woman who saved us, I almost confessed. And Elise, watching her save lives day after day in the hospital, seeing how the guilt had shaped her into someone truly good, I couldn't hate her the way I wanted to. But then I'd remember that night. The water rising, their backs retreating in the darkness, and my resolve would harden once more. The opportunity for true revenge came sooner than expected. 3 months after inserting myself into their lives, my father invited me to a gala celebrating the company's revival. The event was to take place at Riverside Hotel, a cruel irony that wasn't lost on me. As we stood on the balcony overlooking the same river that had nearly claimed my life, my father finally opened up about his past. "I lost my younger daughter in a flood," he said, staring at the dark water below, "right there where that new bridge stands." "I'm so sorry," I replied, the practiced response of a stranger. "No," he shook his head. "You don't understand. I left her behind." I felt my heart pound as he continued, tears streaming down his weathered face. "We could have tried to save her too. Maybe we all would have drowned, but at least we would have tried. Not a day goes by that I don't wish I'd gone back for her." Something inside me cracked. "Why didn't you?" I whispered. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a terrifying moment, I thought he recognized me. "Because I was a coward," he said finally. "Because I told myself that saving one daughter was better than losing both. Because I convinced myself that Sophia would want her sister to live, even at the cost of her own life." "And do you believe that? That she would have wanted that?" He turned away, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "No. Sophia was always the fighter. She would have wanted us all to fight together. She would never have left any of us behind." I stood there, speechless. This broken man wasn't the father who had abandoned me. He was someone else entirely, someone shaped by a decade of regret. Before I could respond, Elise joined us on the balcony. "Dad, Mom's looking for you." He nodded, wiping his eyes before heading inside. Elise stayed behind, studying me with a doctor's analytical gaze. "He told you about my sister, didn't he?" she asked. "Yes." She leaned against the railing, looking out at the river. "You know what's strange? Sometimes, when I look at you, I see her. Something in your mannerisms, the way you tilt your head when you're thinking." She smiled sadly. "She'd be your age now. Well, the age you appear to be." My carefully constructed facade began to crumble. "What was she like? Your sister?" Elise's eyes softened with memory. Fierce, brilliant, stubborn as hell. She always stood up for what she believed in, even when no one else would. She was the bravest person I've ever known. "You must miss her." "Every day." Elise turned to face me fully. "But that's not the worst part. The worst part is knowing that I'm alive because she's not, that my parents chose me." I swallowed hard. "How do you live with that?" "I try to be worthy of it," she said simply. "Every life I save as a surgeon, I save in her name. Every good thing I do because she can't." Something shifted inside me then. The revenge I'd planned suddenly seemed hollow compared to the punishment they'd already inflicted upon themselves. They didn't need me to make them suffer. They'd been doing that perfectly well on their own for 10 years. But revealing myself would release them from that suffering, and I wasn't ready to be that merciful. Not yet. So I continued my charade, becoming more entrenched in their lives while searching for the perfect moment to detonate the truth. That moment came 6 weeks later during a family dinner at their home. My mother had been showing me old photo albums, not knowing she was showing me my own childhood. When she stepped into the kitchen to check on dessert, my father sat beside me on the couch. "You've become like family to us, Cassandra," he said warmly. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done." The perfect opening. "Actually," I said carefully, "there is something I've been wanting to ask you." "Anything." I turned to the last page of the album, where a family portrait showed all four of us, taken just weeks before the flood. "If you could go back to that night on the bridge, what would you do differently?" The colour drained from his face. He closed the album with trembling hands. "Why would you ask me that?" "I'm curious. Would you still choose Elise?" He stared at me, confusion giving way to suspicion. "How do you know we chose? I never told you that part." Before I could answer, my mother returned carrying a pie. She froze when she saw my father's expression. What's wrong?" "She knows details about the flood, details I never shared." My mother set down the pie, her hands shaking. "Cassandra, what's going on?" This was it, the moment I'd planned for. I stood up slowly, looking between them. "Don't you recognize me?" I asked softly. "Look closer. Look at my eyes. My father always said I had his mother's eyes." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father stood so quickly that he knocked over his wineglass, red liquid spreading across the white tablecloth like blood. "It's not possible," he whispered. "Nothing about me should be possible," I agreed. "And yet here I am, the daughter you left behind." My mother took a step toward me, her hand outstretched. "Sophia?" I stepped back. "Don't touch me." "But how?" my father began. "Does it matter?" I cut him off. "I survived. I was found downstream. I spent 10 years in a coma while you built a new life without me." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was close enough. I couldn't explain what I didn't understand myself. "All this time," my mother whispered, sinking into a chair, "you've been right here, watching us, judging us. Why?" "Why?" I echoed incredulously. "You left me to die." "We thought," my father started. "You thought what? That I wasn't worth saving? That Elise deserved to live more than I did?" "No," my mother cried. "We thought we had no choice." "There's always a choice," I hissed, "and you made yours." Just then, the front door opened. Elise walked in, smiling until she registered the tension in the room. "What's going on?" My father couldn't speak. My mother just sobbed harder. So I turned to face my sister, the chosen one. "Hello, Elise," I said calmly. "It's been a long time." She looked confused, then shocked as understanding dawned. "It can't be." "Your sister is alive," my father managed to say. "She's been with us all this time, pretending to be Cassandra Reed." Elise stared at me, searching my face. Then, without warning, she rushed forward and embraced me tightly. I stood rigid in her arms. "I knew it," she whispered fiercely. "Somehow I knew. I felt it every time you were near." I pushed her away. "Don't pretend you're happy to see me. Your perfect life only exists because they chose you." "You think my life has been perfect?" She looked incredulous. "Every achievement, every milestone has been poisoned by your absence. Do you know what it's like to live knowing someone died so you could live? To carry that weight every single day?" "I know what it's like to drown," I retorted coldly. "To feel your lungs fill with water while your family walks away." The room fell silent except for my mother's quiet weeping. My father looked like he'd aged another decade in minutes. "What do you want from us, Sophia?" he finally asked. "Punishment? Penance? Name it." I laughed bitterly. "What I want, you can never give me. I want the last 10 years of my life back. I want parents who would never leave their child behind, no matter what." Then why come back at all? Elise asked quietly. Why not just let us continue suffering, thinking you were dead? It was a good question. One I'd asked myself many times. Why had I engineered this elaborate scheme instead of simply disappearing with my new identity? Because I wanted you to know, I admitted. I wanted you to live with the knowledge that I survived despite you, not because of you. And I wanted you to wonder every day for the rest of your lives if I'll ever forgive you. My father approached me slowly, his eyes pleading. Sophia, we don't deserve forgiveness. What we did was unforgivable, but please don't disappear again. We just got you back. You never got me back, I said coldly. You never had me. Cassandra Reed was a fiction, and now that you know the truth, she no longer exists. I moved toward the door, but Elise blocked my path. So that's it? She demanded. You reveal yourself just to walk away? That's not the sister I remember. My sister faced things head on. She didn't run. Her words stung because they were true. The old Sophia, the one who died in that flood, would never have played such games. She would have confronted them directly, demanded answers, fought for resolution. What do you suggest then? I asked. That we pretend to be a family again? Have Sunday dinners and Christmas gatherings like nothing happened? No, she said firmly. I suggest we start over, not as who we were, but as who we are now. I'm not asking you to forgive them or me. I'm asking you to give us a chance to know each other again. I looked at my parents, these strangers who shared my blood but not my experiences. My mother, reaching out with trembling hands. My father, broken by the weight of his choices. And Elise, the sister who had lived the life that should have been shared between us. Could I do it? Could I stay and face this every day, watch them struggle with their guilt while I struggled with my anger? Before I could decide, my mother spoke. Sophia, if you walk out that door, I'll understand. We don't deserve a second chance, but know this, not a day went by that we didn't regret leaving you. Not a single day. Regret isn't enough, I said. No, my father agreed. It isn't. But it's where we start. I stood frozen, torn between the revenge I'd plotted and the possibility of something I hadn't considered. Healing, not for them, but for me. In the end, I didn't walk out the door. But I didn't stay either, not completely. I'll come back tomorrow, I said finally. We'll talk. That's all I can promise right now. Relief flooded their faces. Not happiness, not joy, just the simple relief of having more time. Time that had been stolen from me, but that I now controlled. As I drove away from their house that night, I realized that my plan had fundamentally changed. I had come back to make them regret their choice, to prove they had chosen wrong. But now I understood. They had always regretted it. They had lived with that regret every day for 10 years. The real question wasn't whether they deserved forgiveness. It was whether I deserved to be free of the anger that had preserved me all this time. Without it, who would I be? I didn't have the answer yet, but for the first time since opening my eyes on that riverbank, I was willing to find out. The water didn't claim me that night. It transformed me. And by the time I figured out who I really was, it might be too late for all of us. But at least we'd face that reckoning together, the way we should have faced the flood. That's not the end of the story, of course. It's barely the beginning. Learning to exist in this strange new reality, me, unchanged from the night of the flood, them, aged and altered by grief, would take more than promises and explanations. There would be therapy sessions where decades of family dysfunction would be laid bare. There would be medical tests as doctors tried to understand my impossible condition. There would be legal challenges as I reclaimed my identity in a world that had declared me dead. And through it all, there would be the underlying question: could we build something new from the wreckage of what was lost? Some days, I think the answer is yes. Like when Elise and I discovered we still finish each other's sentences, despite the years apart. Or when my father taught me to drive, making up for the milestone he'd missed. Or when my mother and I sit silently together, neither of us speaking, but both understanding the weight of what lies between us. Other days, the anger returns with such force that I can barely breathe. On those days, I remember the feel of the water closing over my head, the betrayal as they walked away. On those days, forgiveness seems not just impossible, but wrong. The truth is, I didn't come back from the dead for revenge or reconciliation. I came back because something, fate, God, or my own stubborn refusal to die, gave me another chance. What I do with that chance is still being written. The water was rising fast that night, our family car trapped on the bridge as the dam broke. I can still hear my mother's panic-stricken voice. "Thomas, we can only carry one." But now I also hear what came after. 10 years of regret, of punishment, self-inflicted. And I hear what comes next. The difficult, messy process of learning to live with each other again. They chose which daughter deserved to live that night. Now we all have to live with that choice, together. And somehow that feels like both the cruelest revenge and the most difficult forgiveness I could offer.